What if I told you that one single event, lasting just 6 years, completely redrew the map of the world, took over 70 million lives, and set the stage for the next half-century of human history? This is the story of World War II, a conflict that wasn't just a sequel to World War I, but a catastrophic clash of ideologies, ambitions, and technologies that redefined what it means to be human. It all started from the ashes of the First War. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was meant to bring peace, but instead sowed seeds of bitterness. It forced Germany to accept blame, pay crushing reparations, and give up territory. This humiliation crippled their economy, leading to runaway inflation and widespread despair. Imagine needing a wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. This desperation created the perfect environment for extreme ideas to take root. At the same time, the world's new peacekeeper, the League of Nations, turned out to be all talk and no action. When Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, the world watched. When Italy attacked Ethiopia in 1935, the world watched. When Germany marched its troops back into the Rhineland in 1936, breaking the treaty, the world watched again. Then came the Great Depression, a global economic meltdown that pushed desperate people towards strong leaders who promised national glory. In Germany, that leader was Adolf Hitler. His Nazi party rose to power in 1933, promising to restore Germany's honor and expand its living space, or Rome. In Italy, Benito Mussolini had similar fascist dreams. In Japan, a powerful military government was also bent on expansion. Together, they became the Axis powers, a dangerous alliance driven by a hunger for domination. Hitler began by testing the waters. He rebuilt Germany's army, a direct violation of the Versailles Treaty. Then, in 1938, he annexed Austria, claiming to unite all German-speaking people. His next target was the Sudetenland, a region in Czechoslovakia. Britain and France, haunted by the memory of World War I, chose a policy of appeasement. At the Munich Agreement, they let Hitler take the territory, desperately hoping it would be his last demand. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Just months later, in March 1939, Hitler's armies swallowed the rest of Czechoslovakia. Then, he stunned the world by signing a non-aggression pact with his sworn enemy, Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union. This deal secretly carved up Poland between them and gave Hitler a green light to invade. On September 1, 1939, German tanks and planes stormed into Poland in a terrifying new type of attack called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun. For the next 2 years, the Axis powers seemed invincible. Germany conquered Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France with shocking speed. By June 1940, Nazi flags were flying over Paris. Britain, led by the defiant Prime Minister Winston Churchill, stood alone. He famously declared, "We shall never surrender." Then came the Battle of Britain. For months, German bombers pounded British cities, night after night, in what became known as the Blitz. But Britain's Royal Air Force, with its skilled pilots and brand-new radar technology, fought back ferociously and held them off. It was Hitler's first major setback. But the war was far from over. Italy was fighting in North Africa, and Japan was expanding its empire across Asia. Then, in June 1941, Hitler made his most fateful error. He launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The initial assault was devastating, but the brutal Russian winter and fierce Soviet resistance ground the German war machine to a halt. Then came the day that changed everything. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Over 2,400 Americans were killed. The sleeping giant had been awakened. The United States officially entered the war, and the conflict became truly global. The year 1942 was the great turning point. In the Pacific, the U.S. Navy scored a stunning victory at the Battle of Midway, sinking for Japanese aircraft carriers and crippling their fleet. Japan's unstoppable advance was finally halted. In North Africa, British and American forces defeated Germany's legendary Desert Fox, General Erwin Rommel, at the Battle of El Alamein, pushing the Axis out of Africa. On the Eastern Front, the war's most brutal and decisive battle unfolded. German forces besieged the city, but the Soviets refused to break. Trapped by the merciless winter and a massive Soviet counterattack, the German Sixth Army was annihilated. The defeat at Stalingrad was a disaster from which Germany would never recover. By 1944, the tide had fully turned. The Allies were ready to take back Europe. On June 6, 1944, DITA, the largest amphibious invasion in history, was launched. Over 150,000 Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy. France, despite horrific casualties, the beachhead was secured. By August, Paris was liberated. As the Allies pushed towards Germany from the west, the Soviet Red Army advanced relentlessly from the east. Along the way, they uncovered the unspeakable horrors of the Nazi concentration camps. The world was forced to confront the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. By the spring of 1945, Allied forces were closing in on Berlin. Hiding in his bunker, Adolf Hitler took his own life on April 30th. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. It was V-Day victory in Europe, but the war wasn't over. In the Pacific, Japan fought on with terrifying determination. After brutal island-hopping campaigns like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the U.S. faced a grim choice: a full-scale invasion of Japan, predicted to cost millions of lives, or use a terrifying new weapon. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. An entire city was flattened in an instant, and over 70,000 people were killed. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Faced with this unimaginable destruction, Japan finally surrendered on August 15, 1945. World War II was over. The world that emerged from the rubble was forever changed. Over 60 million people were dead, cities lay in ruins, but a new world order was being born. The United Nations was created to prevent such a catastrophe from ever happening again. The Nuremberg trials held Nazi leaders accountable for their crimes, establishing that even in war, there are lines that cannot be crossed. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as the world's two superpowers, but their wartime alliance quickly dissolved into a new kind of conflict: the Cold War. Colonial empires crumbled as nations across Asia and Africa demanded their freedom, and the war ushered in the atomic age, the space race, and countless technological innovations that shape our lives today. World War II was a battle for the very soul of humanity. It showed us the terrifying depths of our cruelty, but also the incredible heights of our courage. It taught us that peace is not a given, it must be defended, that freedom requires vigilance, and that power without conscience is the most destructive force on earth. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey through history meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories that shaped our world. See you next time.